Good morning, everybody. This
morning.
is my COMM101 persuasion speech titled, Sex Offenders Should Their Secrets Be Kept? The average number of victims for a sex offender is 117. Yes, 117 is the average number of people a single offender has in some way harmed. Those of you who are parents, wouldn't you like to know if this person lives next door, or beside the school, or across the street from the city park? Or are you one that feels that offenders' civil rights are above the possible safety of another person? Today I'll explain to you why sex offenders should be sentenced to probation and registration, and why this should not be construed as a violation of their civil liberties. The most commonly known law that requires registration is Megan's Law. This law was named after 7-year-old Megan, who lived in New Jersey and was raped and murdered by a sex offender who had moved next door. Megan's Law, as defined by the Center of Sex Offender Management, is an informal name for laws in the United States requiring law enforcement authorities to make information available to public regarding sex offenders. Individual states decide what information will be available and how it should be disseminated. Commonly included information includes the offender's name, picture, address, incarceration date, and nature of the crime. The information is often displayed on free public websites, but can be published in newspapers, distributed in pamphlets, and through various other means. I believe that these websites are pretty common knowledge, but in case any of you don't know, here are a couple. On the national level, there is familywatchdog.us and nsopw.gov. These are both sites that you can view offenders in any state. The website for Indiana is insor.org. I like the Family Watchdog website because when you type in an address, it will map all registered offenders in the city and where they work. Here's a handout of the 3 websites in case anybody didn't know them. And here's an example of what the map looks like on Family Watchdog using the address here. This is a map using the address here. The light red dots are sex crimes against children and where the offender's home is. The darker red is sex crimes against children and where they work. And then it also has yellow for rape, blue for sexual battery, and yellow for other offenses like murder, anything that's violent. And this is just zoomed in on, right here would be our address here at work. And then you can click each of these little squares and it brings this up and it shows the picture of the person, their home address, their work address, and then you can click on their convictions to see what they were convicted of and their details, which gives a physical description of them. Can you take one and pass that around? So registration is not the only punishment handed to sex offenders. Most states require probation from a few years up to a lifetime. In Indiana, the probation depends on the number of years for registration. So if you're required to register 10 years, then you have 10 years of probation. If you're required to register a lifetime, then you are on probation for a lifetime. The guidelines of the probation for sex offenders in Indiana, as stated on the in.gov website, are as follows. Number 1, they have to register within 72 hours. Number 2, they cannot reside within 1,000 feet of the school. Number 3, they cannot reside within 1 mile of their victim. Number 4, they cannot miss any appointments, whether it's 12-step meetings like self-help or any counseling that they are required to do. Number 5, they cannot possess any obscene material. They can't go to strip clubs, they can't go to adult bookstores, they can't go into bars, they can't go into businesses that sell any kind of sexual devices or aids, they can't have Playboys, that type of thing. And they cannot consume alcohol or any controlled substance. They are required to inform everybody that they're living with if they are a sex offender and what their conviction was. They cannot travel alone after 10 p.m. They cannot engage in any relationship with a person who has children under the age of 16. They cannot have any contact with any person under the age of 16. They have to sign a waiver of confidentiality and a release of information. And they cannot access the internet in any way through any online service like the computer, your cell phone, iPod, Xbox, BlackBerry, PDA, or public. They can't access internet at all. So what does the probation and the registration do for the recidivism rate? In Indiana, according to, again, the in.gov's website, in 2007, the reconviction rate for offenders that did not go on any kind of probation and went straight to a halfway house or home was 52.5%. They 52.5% recommitted the same type of crime and was convicted. Those who were sentenced to 10-year or lifetime probation, their reconviction rate was 33%. That is almost a 20% difference. 20% less people who may fall victim to a sexual predator. One quote from an anonymous source online and an opinion shared by the ACLU's website is, "As sex offenders have served their time and should not be further punished by violating their constitutional rights." So which constitutional right is being violated? Some would argue that the right to privacy is being violated. However, there is no constitutional amendment that specifically states a person's right to privacy. However, the Supreme Court has ruled in cases to protect right of privacy as a basic human right, but as I stated, it is not a constitutional amendment. The most commonly invoked constitutional amendment is the Fourth and the Fifth. The Fourth Amendment is to protect of unlawful search and seizures, and the Fifth Amendment is to protect the right of self-incrimination. Neither of these amendments say anything specifically about privacy. Now I would like to spend a minute and talk about the term "I did my time." It is my belief that punishment of probation and sex offender registry is common knowledge. I have not heard of anyone who didn't know that there was some kind of registration, so this suggests that most, if not all, sex offenders know the punishment of the crime they are committing. In the case of an offender who has a 10-year notification, that's 10 years that he or she is forced to think about what they did. How long of a sentence did the victim get? A lifetime. The victim, even one who has recovered and healed, still has to spend a lifetime remembering what happened. Sex offenders who cry that their civil rights have been violated need to stop and think about the rights they violated on the victim. The rights that they have violated in the victim are the First Amendment, freedom of speech. And this is violated because the offender coerces the person into not telling, taking away that right. The Fourth Amendment, illegal search and seizure. And this is violated by the act of the abuse, the illegal search of your person. The Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment. Isn't rape, incest, molestation cruel and unusual to the victim? The 13th Amendment, the abolition of slavery. In the case where a person is in prison and forced to be a sex slave, for lack of a better term, isn't that right also being violated? So there you have it, for clearly stated amendments that are violated by the offender. Why is there no outcry for victims' rights by the ACLU? Megan's Law and sex offender punishments were adopted to protect other men, women, and children, not to persecute the offender. There are no clearly stated constitutional rights to protect their right to privacy, but there are four clearly stated rights that are violated in the victim and by some offenders. Even if I personally believed a sex offender could be rehabilitated, I strongly believe that he or she living next to a school or public park is like sitting in a bottle of whiskey in front of an alcoholic. Sure, some alcoholics would be able to turn their back and ignore that, But when it comes to a sex offender, the one who could not turn their back, means another innocent person has been given a lifetime sentence. After hearing the statistics and the law, do you feel that an offender's civil rights have been violated? And if you do you believe that this is unfair to them? Thank you for your time.